those dollars to start flowing in a little bit. I think that the rate of decline may moderate a little bit. I don't think we've turned the corner yet. I think that the total fiscal year revenues may not match those last year we had, and I think it's because the weakness is too widespread across construction, across tourism, across the auto sector, and across most of the areas where we have discretionary spending. So the turnaround won't come in the current year. I think that we do have to recognize
next year. I don't know that the economy is going to get any better, but probably politically a lot of upheaval as a consequence of that. What about the recession? Is the worst behind us? I hope so. So, like the president, I hope so. Don't want to see it get any worse. And
historic perspective, all right? The bad recessions of 73-5 and 81-82 had the strongest recoveries. This recession's been worse. Economists never say never, but we'll have to call it a low probability event that this is a strong recovery. I just don't see it. We'll talk about why. And that goes for employment as well. Again, historically, the weaker the economy has been, the stronger the employment recovery. This time around, I don't see it. And indeed, I think while it's not a lost 10 years, it's not a lost decade, it's a lost 4 years. That GDP in 2011 will be no higher than it was in 2007. And we just wiped that 4 years off. In Arizona, it's worse. We have now eradicated every job that's been created in the last 5 years in Arizona. Okay. Every job that was created in the last 5 years is now gone. And we're still going down, so it's going to get worse. And in Arizona, we'll talk about it. It won't be a lost decade, it'll be a lost 7 or 8 years. But what's the basic story? And I'll compare it to what I said last year. Last year I said there was too much debt on the part of consumers, and they've restructured, but they got a way to go. There's still too much debt. There was not enough traditional savings, and the answer is there's been a lot of savings, and that's good. However, the savings rate declined last quarter, and that's basically what allowed the GDP to grow. And we're in for a tax increase in 2011 that I think will offset a lot of the increase in savings. So I'm not optimistic about that. The stock market obviously is doing much better, but it's 30% off the peak. Housing prices are probably in the process of bottoming out, but jobs and hours worked are declining, just not at the same rate. Consumer spending was squeezed. We think it'll be a little better this year, but not much. We'll talk about consumer confidence. It's up, but it's still ugly. Big, huge cuts in consumer durable spending. Big increases are not likely. And even non-durable spending and services we expected to decline. And that happened for the first time since the Depression. Okay? Business, weakness in domestic spending. Slight strengthening, but not much. Weakness in the rest of the world. Well, Asia looks great. China's growing very rapidly now. That'll help a little. And lots of excess capacity. That's true, except we're about to go through an inventory cycle. The business spending on plant and equipment, I think, will remain weak, and the trade deficit will improve, but only slowly. Housing, the good news is, supply-demand imbalance continues. It's still ugly. No quick fix for credit markets, and that's because our lenders now actually want a source of repayment. Okay? But they actually want an ability to get their money back, and foreclosures remain high and will remain a problem through 2010. For housing, the drag on the worst is over. I think it'll actually be a plus in 2010, but it'll be offset largely by what is a horrific situation in commercial construction. So the recession may be over, but boy, it's just not going to feel very good.
As we're seeing with the president, trying to get the G20 now that it's expanded from the G8, all working together because everybody has to work together. And what you're also going to see is you're going to see us not necessarily being able to control the equity markets, but the equity markets are going to want to see that policies are in place not only to sustain growth, to get jobs where they need to be, but also looking forward into seeing whatever's going to happen to the environment. Our place is going to be carbon-free. I know that's the big talk, being green, but all those issues are on the table. They're out there. They will take time to work. But this is a global economy. We've talked about the U.S., Arizona. It's going through a tough transition, but I think we've come off from the abyss. And really real estate's going to be tough, but there are ways that we can think about adding to building wealth and preserving wealth as we go forward. Fixed income in the dollar I've talked upon. So what I'd like to leave you with, basically is the following. Is that although it is tough, just like I said last year, there are things we can do. And the things we can do is, one, as local companies, we can know where we want to grow and how we're going to grow. Leverage off your business partners and conferences like this that hopefully shed some light. I know it sounds dire, but there are ways that we as a state and community can feel good. And we've got to think outside just the state alone, and that's where this place is going to go. For your own businesses, if you've got a lot of cash, you've got to think about ways that you can make that cash work. You can't just sit on cash, and nor if you're not ready to invest it, but there are ways that we can earn an extra yield and feel good, and knowing where you want with your job and hiring, but there are ways that you can look at getting at better yields than 0 or 10 basis points. With the markets, it's not just a cash, fixed income, equity market alone. Within diversification, there are small cap areas to invest, there are global areas to invest, there are international fixed income and equity markets to invest, and I know it takes a lot of homework, but there are ways to make money in these challenging times.